Let's talk some sports, baby.
And remember, make tomorrow better than today and make today better than yesterday. And you know what we gonna do. We gonna holler at you until next time, baby.
I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up tonight, as usual, with college football. Over New Year's Day, the college football playoff semifinal games got underway, with Notre Dame taking on Alabama and Ohio State in a rematch against Clemson. Well, it turns out neither game was all that competitive. We'll start with Notre Dame, Alabama, though. The Crimson Tide continued their total dominance this season, putting away Notre Dame 31-14. Mac Jones is nearly perfect on the day, throwing for almost 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, going along with 125 yards from Najee Harris and 130 yards and 3 touchdowns from Devontae Smith. So, Drink, little surprise here, huh?
Not really. And if I am surprised, it's just Notre Dame. Here's the deal: Alabama did what Alabama been doing to everybody all season. You know what? I won't even say to everybody because usually we play a team that likes to get it up later in the game, and then you got to actually, bow your back a little bit. But Notre Dame wasn't that. To be honest with you, if you actually pay attention to the game, by the second quarter, Nick was already pulling the dogs off. The third quarter, they really got stagnant. But going into half, I don't think Alabama pressed them as hard as they could have. It was like once the first 2 possessions went the way they went, it was like, listen, this team ain't it. And this team couldn't stop us on our worst day. So we're gonna score enough points where we could just sit on them. And that's all they did. They just sat on Notre Dame for the third and fourth quarter. And that was pretty much what we knew. Alabama was the far superior team. So what's the point of going out here and throwing up 66 on them? You're going to come out with the same result. Alabama was there and Notre Dame shouldn't have been there. And you came out with that same result regardless, right?
On to the next week, in the second half.
Right? Tell us something we don't know. So, Nick coaches in a different manner than most coaches where if he sees that he has the overwhelming advantage, he kind of scored enough points where he can kind of just run the ball, bleed the clock, and his defense make things happen. Now, the reason that's different this year than most years, because we know that Alabama defense is susceptible to giving up points. So you might think you're going to sit and take the air out of the ball, and then next thing you know, the other team to put up 21 quick ones, and then, oh, crap, we in a ball game. Unfortunately, that ain't Notre Dame MO. When the lights get bright, they get frightened. And, that's what we seen. It was Notre Dame. It was Notre Dame in the primetime game once again, and the same result. What they say, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and getting the same result. And that's what the hell we got out of Notre Dame. We keep voting them in, playoff games, BCS championship games, all this other crap. And Notre Dame has done nothing but make us look right once the game over. But I would say one of the things that I was surprised about, listen, Ian Book was Ian Book. Those numbers don't surprise me. I think all 3 of us said this. Ian Book, he's not a dude. He's cool. He's all right,
He's just a dude.
No, he's just a dude. He's just some guy, whatever. Your local Walmart or whatnot. But I think I was surprised that Notre Dame didn't run the ball as well as I thought they would. I thought they was pretty – listen, because you got to remember this. Notre Dame offensive line with Alabama offensive line, and I think Texas A&M was the third finalist for the Joe Moore Award. So you got 2 teams going head-to-head for the Joe Moore Award. So I honestly – and I think I might even say this. I thought their offensive line was going to be able to move our defensive line. Our defensive line is not overly impressive. We don't have that guy in the middle that can make things happen like year in and year out that we're accustomed to. Got edge rushers, but if you can't do anything in the middle, that's where the edge rush get neutralized anyway, because they just run the ball up the middle, and then so much for that. I thought Notre Dame was going to use that more than they did. The kid Williams looked like he was going to get some things going. It depends on how you look at 64 yards and a touchdown on 16 carries. Some might think that's good. I don't think that's good for a playoff game, especially. But this game, it wasn't no surprise, man. You knew what Mac Jones was gonna come in there and do. You thought Devontae Smith was gonna do something to make you say that dude deserves the Heisman. That's what he did. And then Najee Harris came and did what he did. What I like about this, right? Here's what I like about my boys this year. They are so versatile. Think about this. We played Arkansas, not one passing touchdown, and we still threw up like 50 points on Arkansas. Not one. Then you go to Florida State. Oh, we got a team we got to pass against. We can pass it. My point is, in this game, Najee Harris had 125 yards on 15 carries and no touchdown, which is unheard of for Najee Harris. No touchdown? No. So I just like how this offense can just switch on a dime. It's just like, yo, we're going to take the run away. Okay, we'll just pass it. Oh, we're going to take the pass away. Okay, we're going to run it. And this is why when we talk about the next team and then on Friday when we get into what's going to happen on Monday, this is why I don't really fear any other teams in college football this year, just simply because Nick has gotten these guys in the hole where it no matter what day of the week it is, you're going to get the same performance, whether it's Monday or Friday. I know I like to go home early on Friday, but I'm still giving you this effort before I get up out of here early. It's like I just like where their head is at, but at the end of the day, we got what we got. Alabama controlled those trenches, and they got what they got, and we got the result that we wanted out of that.
Yeah, I was thinking that towards the end of this game, and you look up and you see the score, and you're like, man, ain't that something? By the standards of Notre Dame, in recent memory in college football playoffs, the BCS title game, really Notre Dame, they really put up a good fight in this one, guys. They lose by 17. Well, why? You know what? They covered the spread. That's what they did. They covered the spread. What a small victory. That's where we're at. I mean, there's no surprise or anything. If anything, the surprise of this game wasn't 66-14 or whatever number that we're going to throw up that we think that Alabama was capable of playing at. And it's interesting. Another thing, just as he said, and I believe I made this point last week. I said, I'd like to think if you're a defensive coordinator, you come in against Alabama, you got to make a choice. Are we going to try to, take away the run and Najee Harris, or are we going to try to do something about Devontae Smith? I would venture to say, defensive coordinator each and every week says, all right, we're going to, let's just say this week we'll take Najee Harris away. And regardless, what ends up happening is you don't take either one of them away. You just get shredded, here and there and everywhere, and no matter where you turn, the yards. I mean, the framing of all this is just incredible. We're speaking about Najee Harris didn't score a touchdown on the ground, and it's almost like we're impressed. Like, you know what? 15 for 125. You gave up 8 yards a carry to Najee Harris, but my God, when you got in the red zone, you really hunkered down and you didn't let them, run the ball in the red zone. There we go. There's another moral victory for us, guys.
That's bend, not break. Ain't that the terminology?
That's
bend,
right.
but don't break.
We bit, but we didn't break. But you know what? You can't. Alabama, to me, vastly superior to Notre Dame. I think they're clearly better than the other two teams in the playoff, Ohio State and Clemson. This was really an easy one. For Devontae Smith, this guy, what a career and what a luxury to have. What you go back to the 2018 championship game where you almost sometimes you forget that it was. You get caught up in what Tua did in the second half of that game, and you forget that the game-winning touchdown was scored by Devontae Smith. He was on the receiving end of that. And then Devontae Smith is very easy last season to get lost in the shuffle of your Jerry Judys and your Henry Ruggs, and even Jalen Waddle sometimes gets as the fourth wide receiver last year. You look at him and how explosive and dynamic he can be. And it's easy to forget about Devontae Smith. Well, you won't forget about him no more because you go for 7 for 130. Think about the way this game started. I mean, they just throw it's in sense just a little swing pass, and he gets one block from I believe it was John Mechie, and he's just off. I mean, it did look like the most effortless thing you've ever seen, and in all actuality, that's what it seems to have been, for his career and this year especially. And I don't tweet out or Facebook things out, definitively during games, but at some point you've just seen enough. And Devontae Smith, I said, just give Devontae Smith the Heisman. I mean, it's over. I mean, you haven't seen a better player in college football this year. If to Notre Dame's point, I mean, it's just what we thought would happen. I mean, they didn't have the athletes on the outside. We knew they were going to have to be, an overwhelming advantage in the trenches. They'd have to be completely dominant in the run game. And you're right. You look at what the numbers that Kyron Williams put up, and Ian Book, of course, we know what he can do with his legs. And I think if you look at Alabama's defense, and when you chronicle, as you well say, you have two of the best offensive lines in the country. Well, when Alabama's defense can come in there and, really hold you about, a shade under 4 yards of carry, you got to be pleased with that. And, a shade under 4 yards of carry was not going to do it in this game. You had to be dominant. You had to control the clock. You had to limit possession for Alabama. Perhaps that would maybe keep, Mac Jones out of rhythm. They couldn't do that. And Alabama is very rightly advancing to the national championship game.
Yep, not much argument for me, obviously. Looks like about what we expected. I was hoping for something, man. I thought, I was thinking like maybe they can run the ball, maybe they can kind of shoot the clock, But after you watch the SEC title and you watch what Florida tried to do and how close they came, you had to think there's probably no team left that can do that. I mean, because Florida, and you think what makes Notre Dame fall apart in these games? Like what happens to this team that's so good in the regular season, so storied, and they always get what happens? Well, the problem is they're not fast. They don't have any speed. These teams are not fast. They're not elite athletes. If you took all of Alabama's players and all of Notre Dame's players, or just say all the skill positions and defensive backs, you lined them up and they ran 100 yards, there would be 7 Alabama players before the first Notre Dame player would cross, and there'd probably be 4 more Alabama players for the second guy crossed. It's just like that's what you see. Like it's just like, oh, well, that's it. And the play Jay you referenced as soon as I saw that play, I was like, yeah, this game's over, because they buy in so well. Here's John Mechie. He's like 25 yards downfield, just gritting and grinding and stuffing this dude in the locker and taking his lunch money. And behind him is Devontae Smith, literally walking on water. The man is gliding. His feet aren't touching the ground. He's just gliding through people. And you're like, what's he doing? And he just into the end zone. You're like, oh yeah, okay. It's done. I'm gonna turn on, Ice Road Truckers or something on the Weather Channel until this game's over, because this is all I don't need to see anymore. So yeah, it's just that's what I started to think. I was like, that is what is wrong with Notre Dame. I don't know how they fix that. Brian Kelly's got to go figure something out, because for all it is, I think Brian Kelly's a decent X's and O's guy. I think he's a good coach.
Yeah, I agree.
You can't win when you don't have that much of a disadvantage. You just can't do it. So. Hey, Alabama's probably going to get Jalen Waddle back for the national championship, especially if it's pushed
right.
Back. So,
Ooh, boy.
Good luck, Ohio
Right.
State. And, speaking of those Buckeyes, there was a second game, which we kind of hope would be closer, but really wasn't. Justin Fields decided he would just boat race the hell out of Trevor Lawrence. He catapulted his draft stock back up. He threw 6 touchdowns en route to a 49-28 win over Clemson. So, Drink, this one's a little more surprising, I think you'd say. What do you think about this game?
Oh yeah, that is a surprise. I'm a Clemson guy. But I would say this, and let me rephrase. When I say I'm a Clemson guy, I'm just saying I like Dabo. I like the extra he brings into college football. But hey, when you talk that talk, you better walk that walk. And let's just say Dabo had a long walk to the bus. But listen, one thing I want to talk about is the misconception. There's a misconception out there that since Ohio State beat Clemson 49-28, they dominated their game more than what Alabama did with Notre Dame. And that's a misconception. Actually, that's not true. Because if you actually look, Clemson was scoring more sporadic. The problem was the second quarter where Ohio State scored, I want to say 21 points, and Clemson didn't score anything. That was the game, because they ran even for the rest of the game. So it wasn't one of these things where, like, people, I hear people on Twitter or whatnot, they talk like, oh, well, Ohio State, they would have smoked Clemson. It was never a game. Yes, it was. It was a game. It was a game at some point.
Can I add in real quick? Notre Dame scored their second touchdown with 56 seconds left in the game. So.
Right. So I think people get lost because they see 49 and then they see 31. Then you see 28 and then you see, 14. So you think, you kind of look at that, you're like, oh, well, Notre Dame put up more of a fight than Clemson. No, not really. It's just you have two different coaching styles where you have Ohio, you got Ryan Day that's like, look, Dabo was talking that trash. We trying to blow the scoreboard up, but you got Nick where he's like, listen, we got another game. This ain't the end. You know what I'm saying? Let's not burn out everybody. Let's kind of just sit on the ball and it's just run the air out of the ball. Then you had Ohio State. And listen, to their credit, Justin Fields was not impressive this year, but this game, he showed something. I got to put some respect on him. He showed them 22 of 28, 385 yards. If you would have told me that he threw like that officially in the game, I'd be like, yeah, all right. Yeah. I wouldn't have believed that until I seen it. 6 touchdowns. Like, listen, like the guy went off. And it seems when he took that hard hit, that lit an even, bigger fire on him. And then, he went. I think he went and got a quick cortisone somewhere. That's just me. I don't know. Because he came out there. He still was hurt. You could tell he was still hurt, but you could kind of tell he hurt. But he feeling good too. Let's go ahead and play ball. One of the things I was really disappointed though with Clemson, before I give all the praise to Ohio State, I don't know what the hell, Travis Etienne. I've been hearing all this, I want to see how how Ohio State stopped that 1-2 punch of Lawrence and Etienne. I thought Lawrence was going to have a problem passing the ball, but it was the opposite. They had a problem running the ball. And something tells me, for all the stuff that Ryan Day said about Brent Venables stealing signs and all this, I'm not saying his defense coordinator stole signs, but they knew them plays really, really well. Now, I can say this. What I think happened was Ohio State knew they was going to be in the playoffs. When they beat Northwestern, they knew they was going to be in the playoffs. They also knew it was a high chance that they was going to play Clemson again. Why? Because we knew the committee wasn't going to run it back for a rematch of Clemson and Notre Dame and then Bama and Ohio State. What's the point of that? So in order to get the two best matchups, you had to switch those two teams. And Ohio State knew that, and they did what Clemson did to us in 2018. We're not worried about Northwestern that much. We're worried about the first team we got to play in the postseason, which was Clemson. They studied that playbook, left, right, up, down. They had multiple weeks, and you can tell because in a lot of those plays, the player just was in the right position every single time. It was like, come on, man, this dude a true freshman. He already know the route. Hold on. But they did the hard work. They did the research, and you can just tell. Yeah, and it reminded me of the 2018 National Championship game where Clemson had Alabama number. Every time they did something, they was in the right place. And it was just like, and the one touchdown Alabama scored was just Tua and Jared Judah just doing what they do. Like, I'm going to throw it up. You got it, Judah? All right, cool. And then, we know the rest of the struggle. It was a struggle. So I want to give a big shout out to Ohio State because I thought Ohio State was at a disadvantage because of their schedule been so stop and go. But then I forgot about the fact you get 2 or 3 weeks to focus on your first opponent. And if you played Northwestern, while your opponent had to play Notre Dame, most likely they had to worry about Notre Dame. You didn't have to worry about Northwestern. So you got a few more days to work on the small things. It was very impressive, very disciplined Ohio State team. And then for Clemson, listen, they came into this game. They didn't have a offensive coordinator, Elliott. So Dabo had to move a guy up to the box. But here, listen, it's no excuses. It's no excuses on this level. Especially when you talk that crap like Dabo talk, it's no excuses. You went out there, you got smoked. And I will remind people, last 2 games Clemson had in the playoffs, national championship and this playoff game, they didn't got smoked on both of them. They didn't got smoked. I didn't want to throw it out there. So,
LSU is,
it don't matter. They got smoked. They got smoked. But I'm gonna say the rest of this for Friday before I get into the Alabama-Ohio State thing. But I would say Ohio State showed us that Clemson. A lot of people said they had took a step back, but it was hard for us to see that step back because of the level of competition. I being one of them, I just felt like maybe they're not that bad, but they don't play anybody to really make us think they're that good. So they're middling. I think Ohio State proved that Clemson has taken a step back. As far as, they're a young team. They don't have those veterans like Dabo is accustomed to. But you did think he had the better quarterback or possibly the better running back, and it still didn't matter. It really didn't matter. So, listen, kudos Ohio State. They was prepared. Now they get a week and some change if they don't push the national championship back to get ready for Alabama, and you're gonna need every day of it. And I do think Alabama gonna need every day, especially on the defense side of the ball, to get ready for Ohio State. We'll see. But yes, to answer your question, that game was wildly a surprise for me. And but Ohio State was a better team and they won. So we'll see how it get down when we get on the Friday show.
Oh boy, Dabo. I don't know where old Dabo, does his banking, at the Clemson campus credit union or what have you. But wherever he banks, I hope we got that overdraft protection because definitely was cashing check writing checks that the players ultimately could not cash. And there you got Ohio State folks. I tell you, if I was a Ohio State fan, I would go right out and be requesting one of them limited edition 11th ranked Ohio State hoodies. I'd have one of those. I'd be wearing it right now, matter of fact. But this was surprising. I said Clemson would win this game by about 10 to 14 points. It did not turn out that way, as you mentioned. I think both of these teams in contrast to the 2019 season, I think both took a step back. It looks like Clemson's step back was a bigger step in reverse. It was surprising. Justin Fields, and we've said this. He's had his struggles. Whether it's the Northwestern game where he wasn't very good. He threw 3 interceptions against Indiana. It just for whatever reason, whether it was the lack of rhythm that they were able to establish with the cancellations due to the COVID or all these other things, it just wasn't the Justin Fields just didn't feel like he was quite as good as he's capable of being. Oh boy, did he play one whale of a game. There was literally, I think you can go back and look at every pass that this guy threw. There's one pass where you look at him, and it was the interception. I think he got hit as he threw, but even so, it was 3 guys on this one Ohio State receiver. That was the one throw through the entire game where you're just scratching your head and wonder, what were you doing? And even with that interception, the guy had a 99 QBR. That's what happens when you throw 6 touchdowns. 6 touchdowns in 28 attempts. And these were not, many of these throws were not routine, little swing passes, a little, some guys get these cheap completions. They throw little drag routes and they have a guy in motion. He just snaps the ball and tosses it to him. And that's a pass attempt. Oh, some of these were just deep 50-yard, just bombs and just absolute, the precision with some of these throws, the chemistry that he has with this guy, Chris Olave, it's something to behold. And of course, this guy, Trey Sermon, boy, has he burst onto the scene. He comes out there and Northwestern, gets as much of a good defense as Northwestern has had. Trey Sermon rushes for 330 yards or whatever it was. And this one, 31 carries, 193 yards. And my boy, he doesn't look like the most physical specimen that you ever seen, but boy, he packs a punch, doesn't he? When he comes, he's always finishing the play forward. He rarely gets pushed back as far as I can tell. And this is a guy that it's funny. Some of these programs, whether it be Justin Fields coming from Georgia or Joe Burrow coming from Ohio State to LSU, Trey Sermon came from Oklahoma. It's almost incredible in this day and age, just some of the transfers that we're seeing. College football has its own, almost in some sense, its own level of free agency that's just fascinating because it didn't always used to be like this. But Ohio State I think they deserve all the credit in the world. I don't know if it was the motivation that they got from, the Dabo coaches poll, which was just, ridiculous. But they just, you hit it right on the head. I mean, Travis Etienne, 10 for 32. I mean, that's shocking in itself. And I think even more shocking that I don't know when's the last time I've ever seen a Clemson offensive line get, assaulted like that. I think it helps when you have that type of lead, but in the second half, Trevor Lawrence was under siege the entire second half, and he really didn't have much of a chance. I think it's almost incredible that he, was efficient and as good as he was by the numbers. But he was running for his life the entire second half. And it almost, and I know Clemson, I don't think I don't have any sense that they'll, all of a sudden, fold and they'll fall back to the middle of the ACC pack. I don't see that happening, but it does give you cause to pause when you look up and down the roster. Trevor Lawrence is going to be gone. Travis Etienne won't be there. And those are the two guys that really stand out in my mind. I know we have DJ Ukulele. I can't say his name. It's not ukulele, but you know who I'm talking about. We have him, and we've seen him this season. He proved he's got some skills, and I think he'll be fine. But do they have another Travis Etienne? Do they have another T. Higgins? I didn't see the next Isaiah Simmons. It just brings me questions like, who is the next man up for him and will lead Clemson into the future of college football? I'm just a little curious. This whole idea, I think, remember when Alabama lost to Clemson, and then last year they didn't make the playoffs, and it was like, oh, well, it's Clemson's turn. Now Clemson's going to run college football. They're going to be the next dynasty. Well, I'm not sure if I see that right now. I really don't. In some shape or form, I think Clemson, in some respects, has just benefited from a weak ACC. I'm not saying they're going to go anywhere, and I think they can continue to make playoffs if the ACC is going to be, this mediocre. I'm a little bit concerned about Clemson moving forward, I must admit.
Yeah, this was unbelievable to see a Brett Venables coach defense get absolutely just dismantled like that. I mean, I know LSU put the hurt on them too. I kind of gave it a pass. It was like, well, it's that LSU team, so whatever. But then to see a more, not average, but a more like what you'd expect in a playoff game offense comes up with Justin Fields, the Ohio State team, it just hasn't looked amazing yet. Justin Fields hasn't had a great game. They just put it on him. I mean, they just took him to the woodshed, man. It's unbelievable to watch. The biggest things I'll say for Clemson is I don't feel like Travis Etienne was himself. I don't know if he was hurt, he had something going on, whatever. That's not Travis Etienne, man. I don't know what he was doing, but he just didn't feel like he was there for whatever reason. Maybe he had some lingering injury he was trying to play through. I don't know. But I would say that the rest of the skill positions, you're absolutely right. They just don't feel the normal. This isn't Justin Ross and all these T. Higgins type guys. It's like a step down. They're not horrible, but they just don't have that difference-making factor that other teams in this playoff seem to have. And I think the loss of that linebacker, the Skalski guy, it seems like when he leaves this defense, they just turn to mush. Like before he got thrown out for targeting, they were having it was back and forth, and then he leaves, and then the dam just bursts. And then against Notre Dame, they put almost 50 on him. Like I don't know what that kid means to that defense, but he must be pretty important because as soon as he leaves, this whole thing just goes to hell. Trevor Lawrence, a lot of people are making these ridiculous hot takes. Of, well, I don't know, maybe Justin Fields is the first overall pick. Like, no, he's not. Like Trevor Lawrence threw for 400 yards off his back foot the entire game. Like, I don't know what you wanted the guy to do. I mean, I ain't out here caping for him because he's not a Jaguar yet. He can't tell me I'm doing that. But anyway, look, I mean, Justin Fields is a baller. I think the storyline is that Justin Fields was massively underrated coming into this game. Yeah, I mean, Indiana was a good defense. Northwestern played quarters the entire game. That's why Trey Sermon beat Eddie George's all-time school record, because they played quarters every snap through the whole game. So, I mean, Justin Fields is still that guy. He's still going to be a great quarterback too. You saw two great quarterbacks, but Trevor Lawrence is the better quarterback still. So these hot takes of all of a sudden that Justin Fields is the first overall pick, like it's, I don't know if y'all have heard it all that much. I've seen it a lot. It's nonsense. But yeah, man, Ohio State's, they're a good team. The whole 7 games thing was nonsense. The 11th ranked team, Dabo's a clown. I mean, we all know that. I think it's clownish. Other people think it's great. I don't know, but I don't see it. But they went out there, they played a better game. They were better coached. They were better prepared. And let's remember, Ohio State, even though they look great, they still recruit in the top 5 every year too. So I'm the
top 3
game. Yeah, I mean, in and out every year, but I'm most impressed. I'll leave it with this though. I'm the most impressed with Ryan Day, because up until this point, I thought Ryan Day was just another Kirby Smart, a guy that can recruit everybody in the world. Right. But then when he gets to the big game, he can't figure it out. Well, he just changed that narrative, and I'm curious, man. I'm curious to see if Ohio State can bring it. I mean, we'll talk about it on Friday, but curious.